So really pleased to be here and share some important topic with you, or at least one that I found that teachers and students are very interested in throughout the country. Today I'm going to talk a little bit, have a few stories, show some video, go back and forth. Normally when I do this kind of presentation, we have a video camera that actually can also switch back and show amplification so you can see very closely. I tried to, with some assistance, arrange the chairs so that those of you who are, so you can see as close as possible to the piano. So if you're sitting just outside of that range, I would encourage you to maybe move to a place where you can get to see. This might be a little bit better. There's one over here too. Of course, there'll be latecomers that could also play, but just try to get the best shot you can. Okay, so a story that I recalled in the last couple of years is when I was a young artist at the Ravinia Festival, and I was 21 years old, and I was at that stage of life where I was like prone to take things personally anyhow, and empathize with others who were in pain. So when a young man was playing Mozart for Menachem Pressler, has anybody seen Menachem Pressler in action in a master class? A couple of you? So he's a very short man, but he makes up for whatever he has in stature by being about 500 times more intense than your average human being. So you sort of feel the thunderclouds gathering, at least in this case, as this young man was playing. And I was an aspiring teacher at the time too, so I had a number of things that I thought, I would address this. Well, the first thing Mr. Pressler said was, I always tell the state of my technique by the state of my trill. This little pause, he says. Your problem is you have no trill. Well, at that point, my stage of maturity, I remember thinking, he just said that? That's so insulting. Oh, that's so horrible. And only later did I realize what a gift he gave to that young man, who I've now just checked recently is a full professor of piano somewhere. He completed his doctorate in piano, which is probably the most demanding doctorate. But he told him like it was. And he gave the gift to him, but to all of us who were in attendance, because it's so true. Good trills and tremolos are the hallmark of good coordination. So in sort of microwave fashion, I will share some ideas that I found helpful for myself and my students and other teachers. And I'm going to go back and forth, so I think I'll stick, you all have the handout. And so I'll actually start with a little bit of instruction, then go to video and bounce back and forth and have you engage in a few interactive exercises as well. So I'll go ahead and start with understanding of the sound point. You might know what I'm talking about, the sound point. Any idea, students here, pedagogy students? I think this is an essential thing really for all of us and all of our students to know really soon. And so you know what this is, but it's a matter of sort of understanding it and really applying it not just from an intellectual standpoint, but also kinesthetically. On a well-regulated piano, and the first note I just put down, I didn't really sense much of a sound point. Oh, there's a little bit there. It's that little bump, the escapement that you feel, and I just put these down silently. And we like to do this as kids often. We'll put something down and you feel that little resistance, and you either have it and it plays, or you can go so silently so you don't have to play anything. There are plenty of modern pieces that ask you to sort of catch a bunch of the pieces, the keys silently, put the sostenuto down, perhaps play a chord, and then get the sympathetic overtones as a result of that. But understanding the sound point, and that there are three main ways to go through the sound point. So three main ways would be shallow. How many people have seen Piano Cat? Anybody seen Piano Cat? This is you've seen it?
On YouTube?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, okay. So, but you can put your hand up. Has anybody else seen Piano Cat? Oh, yes. We're working on getting the interaction here. Okay, so Piano Cat I think was all the rage maybe 5 years ago or so, maybe 10, close to 10. And it's a cat that was captured playing sort of like this, and then they made a Piano Cat concerto, or Catcerto or something, or somebody actually composed music around it. But Piano Cat it has a very surfacey sound. So Piano Cat only can go about this much. And so a kid who doesn't have much weight behind him or her, first may play kind of like this. It's a shallow sound. I've only heard one professional pianist cultivate a career on a shallow sound. I didn't think it was possible, but one person has actually done it. and it's very rare. It's just not a compelling sound. It's usually quiet, but you can also have something where you try to play from above and you're aiming for the top of the keys, and if you play loudly, then you get a sort of slap sound, and that's also an element, a hallmark of what we often refer to as hack pianism. Often people who may work, say, in the theater, who can play sight read very well, but they kind of slap at the piano and not really very concerned about sound quality. So the surfacey way is when you're aiming for the top of the key, and one way you can test this is to hold the key firm with another hand, and then aim for the top of the key, and then let go of it, and you can almost hear the extra slap of the key. So that's a shallow sound. The opposite of this is if you were aiming, say, down below the key slip. That would be a key-bedded sound. So if you aim down there without any rebound, you're going to get a really ugly sound. So it's you're going to have they can usually get nastier than that. That's not nice, but something like that, really, you get the extra harshness in the quality. And so there's very little rebound. I could actually have done less than that. Like that. That's really obnoxious, right? I'm not rebounding at all. So that would be if you were aiming down here and going through that, you're going to get a really ugly sound. If instead you hold the key down and sort of tap on it with your, sort of using a lift and drop with what I call a quiet hand, which is element number 2, and then let go of that and then rebound at the bottom, you're going to go to that point where most of us live in the soundscape where we play the piano, so that when we want to play a cantabile sound, any sort of melody, you're gonna listen through that sound and also attack the piano in a way that's going to have a rebound at the bottom of the key. So understanding that is really important, because in trills we don't come back up, raising the key all the way up when we play a trill or a tremolo when it's very fast. We have to play closer to the sound point where the escapement has returned and allows the key to play repeated notes more quickly. Okay, a quiet hand. This is such a simple concept. It's just basically that anytime you are playing one finger or one or more fingers, that the other ones are allowed to be at rest on the surface of the key. So we don't have this amplified, so hopefully you can see my hand. If I'm just putting it over Chopin's preferred position in a natural hand position, I'm not doing this. And if I were playing, say, the G sharp here, the other fingers then are allowed to rest on the surface of the keys. Sometimes, in the case of the thumb, if this is better, this would mean better alignment for me here than if I were to try to keep my thumb over the keys at all costs. So if you're playing across your body, it's much more efficient to play in alignment with your forearm and the tendons that support that finger right here. If you do this, you can see how ridiculous that would be. You'd just be doing a lot of extra wasted motion. But back to the hand itself, whenever you're playing any kind of chord, you often will see in trill playing, I have a friend who really is a terrific pianist, but I haven't seen him play live for over 15 years, but I remember he would trill, and maybe on a 1-3 trill, the rest of the hand was what I call in conflict with itself. So he might be going like this or something. And his trills actually sounded better than what I just did, but I always thought, it would be so much better if he would was able to quiet that hand. And that makes me think of a quick tangent story of Nelita True. She talked about how she watched Horowitz, and he had the pinky up in the air in some of the videos. And so she thought she'd give it a try after she watched it on TV, and she went to her lesson, and the teacher said, "What are you doing that for?" And she said, "Well, Horowitz does it." And the teacher said, "Well, think how much better he'd play if he didn't do that." and she said that later on in life, it was curious that he actually did become more quiet, that you did see a quieter hand, if you will, in that language. So, but the quiet hand is essential for being able to do these other elements as well. I'm going to move to the vibrato technique because I found another piece of video. Let's see if hopefully the smart technology here will wake up quickly. Yes. Okay, actually, this is on another video here. So this is what I call the basic vibrato motion. The vibrato technique has nothing to do with string vibrato or voice vibrato. It is, the demonstration is clear in the video, so this might be easier to see. It's using your proximal muscles, your arm and your back, are engaged in doing something that is, if you think about how you knock, and you'll see in the video, you might think of how you knock at a door. Many people knock like this, and that's very isolated, as though you're almost cutting off from here. When you use your whole body and you knock this way, you're able to create, you're getting these for free, basically, these motions here, because they're initiated from proximal muscles, which allow you to absorb these in bursts of, smaller bursts, I should say, of the energy is dispersed, that you can do it in groups of 3, 4, 5, 6, or even up to perhaps 8. Take a look at this.
Knock 3 times on a vertical surface. First, knock politely, bringing the arm up and keeping it stationary. Perform 3 separate knocking motions from the wrist. If you were to do this repeatedly, fatigue would set in, and there's a risk of injury. Now, notice the difference when I lift my forearm and move continuously by a forward movement of the upper arm. Open your hand, keeping your fingers gently curved in an arch from the bridge. Lift the forearm with the flexible wrist and drop onto the flat surface, producing the 3 consecutive knocks, now absorbed by the fingers. If the forearm and upper arm remain fixed during the vibrato motion, fatigue and stiffness will set in, particularly when you do a longer series of attacks. This is very common, but is easily remedied. Begin again. Prepare to lift your forearm and follow through with a basic knocking motion. This time, as the upper arm moves forward, allow the wrist to ascend. This means that the wrist must be low enough, although still in the medial range, for the first attack. Add successively more attacks, still moving forward. Then, perform the motion repeatedly, combining the in and out movement of the upper arm with the simultaneous up and down movement of the forearm. The wrist is supple, and the movement is visible in the horizontal and vertical planes. This is the cycling vibrato motion needed when we play repeated notes, octaves, chords, and tremolos.
Okay, so that one down. Now this one ready to go in a second. I actually say this partly because, mostly because I'm a teacher too, and I know there are a lot of students in the room. But in my experience from I show this kind of piece of video in a room full of teachers or even non-musicians, I see a lot more animation actually in the body. I saw some people moving back here, but you students, don't be afraid to take a chance to actually move. You have to, if you're going to inspire other people. How many of you want to be teachers? Anybody want to be teachers? Okay, well, you have to get to that stage where you're willing to use your body, use your voice in a demonstrative way, take a chance, animate yourself, okay? So don't be afraid if you see something happen and you want to experience it, you want to move around, don't be afraid to do so. I'm going to go ahead and do another tangent then, since I got all these teachers, students here. So I want everybody to stand up, please. Okay, so with a quick thing, you can move however you want right now. I'm going to talk for another 30 to 40 seconds or so. I once saw a demonstration by Vanessa Cornett, who was doing a presentation just before me in San Diego, and it would dovetail so nicely with my presentation on practicing performance. Hers had to do with the brain and brain research and teaching. And so one of the things is and you can feel free to stretch and then move. Probably I'll have you sit down in about 15 seconds. That when your brain, when you're teaching a lesson, let's say it's a 45-minute lesson, well, the research has shown pretty compellingly that the retention rate for a student, you say, hi, how are you? This is right up at the top. And they take their coat off and they tell you about their week, and then you get into the lesson just into all that juicy stuff you want to tell them, and it shows that the retention really goes down. And then just as you're getting when that other student is coming in, it tends to go back up, and then you might recap a few things about it. But you've missed all of this area here. And so a very, very simple thing is to create different events. Feel free to sit down anytime. And so if this were 45 minutes, if you could break this into 3 15-minute segments, then if you suffer a little bit of this, it's less likely to be as deep, and you have more retention. So the brain, we human beings like beginnings and endings. So the more you can actually create that. So sometimes I will just ask people, so I'll say, stand up. If I can't think of something else that I need to engage you in. But we have just now created a little ending here, and now we have a new beginning. You're sitting again. So now we'll continue. So I'll do a couple more things with the basic essential components. We talked about the understanding the sound point, right? What are the 3 main ways to go through a sound point, students?
Is it the surface?
Surfacey way, sort of shallow. What's another one?
Keep it.
Keep at it, right. And what's the third way? Third main way? I didn't say it, but I call it cushion. Going through the sound point and rebounding. So as soon as you go through the sound point and then you decelerate. So in other words, if you play, you should feel, if I can demonstrate on your arm, you can perhaps see what I'm doing, that there's a rebound. You see the wrist is sort of the shock absorber that allows you to do that. But if you aim lower than that, even if you rebound at some point, if you're aiming too far, you're going to get a harsh sound. And if you don't aim far enough, you'll get a slap sound or a surfacey sound. Okay, the quiet hand, just allow everything to be as quiet as possible. Actually had some mail from a teacher, actually he's an amateur pianist in Australia, and he said he's been working with some of my materials for 3 years, and he said, but he hadn't really, he wanted me to expand on the idea of the quiet hand because he'd been sort of holding his fingers quiet, and I thought, what an interesting way of doing it, because if you look at my hand this way, I mean, if I pick it up, it's loose, right?